Welcome, leaders. I am so glad that you're here for another episode of the Pausecast. So today I have a topic that I think is really all about the duality of being on the poles of ordinary and extraordinary. I think as leaders, especially now, here we are, it's almost 2024. We are being asked and tasked with how to show up, not just being extraordinary in our abilities as a leader and influence and capabilities, but also just being plain old human, meaning ordinary. And the reason this came about, I was at a conference earlier this year and I heard one of the speakers talking about the duality of humanness and leading from the heart. And it really got me thinking about how this applies in the corporate world, because I think we're striving for being exceptional, for doing what we need to do, for high achievements, for the things that we may have grown up being praised for. Maybe you know someone like that. Maybe it's myself. That's who I know personally. And I'm joking, but you know what I mean? Like, we are all in a new world of leadership. So today's topic is about how to be extraordinary and ordinary, because we do need both, and how to be in those two poles and how to really be able to navigate knowing you can be both and you can't just be one, you need to be both. And let's just go through this one at a time so that we know what we're talking about here. First, ordinary. All right. Ordinary, I would say, is what we want to actually most of the time not be, right? We want to stand out. We want to be seen and heard for the talents that we bring. But the reality is, guess what makes us approachable? What makes us better communicators is that ordinariness of that humanness. So when I think of ordinary, there's three things that come to mind that I want to really help you remember as well. Maybe these are already things you do really well already, and that's awesome. So the first one is, if we are ordinary, and I already mentioned this one, is it just means we're human, right? Like, we're human, man. That's it. So what does that mean to be human? It means we are approachable. That's the second thing. Approachable, meaning maybe we are not someone really hard to get a hold of. Maybe we have open doors at our offices if you literally are in the office, or you hold that as a value, knowing people can approach you. If there's office hours you might hold, someone might come in just to say hi, and that's totally okay. Maybe they have an agenda, maybe not. It's just about being approachable. And a lot of times, if you think about maybe examples in your career where someone hasn't been that approachable, it might have been a manager who was so busy you felt bad or guilty encroaching on them because they made it very clear how busy they were. I've worked with leaders personally where I never, ever got eye contact, ever, from probably really human people. But for whatever reason, that wasn't okay for them to really say hello with their eyes. And as we all know, eye contact is extremely vulnerable. We may not think about this a lot, but trust me, and you know this too, if you make eye contact with someone and you even are present for that nanosecond that you both hold between you, you feel it, right? You feel it. And that is being human. And also, I think it's really important to know that's vulnerable, right? That's also, I would say, ordinary. And we're getting into the extraordinary category here. But, I think the first thing, again, is being human. The second thing is being approachable, whatever that means for you. And this would be a great journaling topic, right? Like, how have I seen people be approachable to me as a leader? A lot of times it's a lot easier for us to know and excite examples that are beyond ourselves. When we look at ourselves, it's a little harder because we're really in it, right? We're in it day to day. So it's harder to identify those things. So think of someone in your past, maybe now even, who's been someone in your life as a leader. You found them really approachable. It could have been a coach, right? It could have been a sports coach. It could have been someone who was your manager. It could have been a colleague. It could have been anybody. And I think of that as a really prime example. What were the qualities that they held? Maybe they had eye contact and they smiled, right? Those are just human. I love that. Okay. So then the other aspect of ordinary to me, and this kind of goes along with what we're talking about here, is humility, being humble. Being humble is one of the most desired traits that leadership aspires to. And it is a hard skill, right? How do we stay humble when we know we want to be potentially successful, or you think that there's this pace you have to keep up, but you don't want to let people know that you have a doctor's appointment? That would be humble to share that. Humble, what I think about is, and you might have heard this term humble brags, right? Where it's just like, you're just saying what's so, but it's a little bit of a brag. But the reality is you're just claiming what went well and what you're excited about. And I love thinking about it like that. So humbleness is so important, and just part of being ordinary. I think we're all humble to some extent, especially maybe with new folks or an experience where we're learning something new, because we have that runway where we can appear humble, appear like we are learning new things, and that all ties in. So just take a deep breath into ordinariness right now with me, inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth, knowing it's okay to be ordinary. It's okay. It's all good. It just means I'm human. I love that. I love that statement. So that's one side of the spectrum. Okay. Now it's okay also to be extraordinary. And what do you think of when I say that word? Maybe there's some judgments that already come up, like hard, solitary, alone, difficult, challenging, grueling, maybe even dread. I don't know, whatever it is. And maybe there's excitement, there's joy, success, glee, like there's all kinds of stuff. So I think it just depends, and it can be either side of those things. But extraordinary is the other end of the spectrum, where we also get to be extraordinary. And in extraordinary, I think of three things as well that kind of lead into this space. I think the first and foremost thing is, to be an extraordinary leader, it means to be courageous. It means to stand in your truth when you know that's what you desire, when you are standing in your own conviction. Maybe you're swimming upstream. I was coaching a client the other day who had exactly this instance where he firmly believed that this particular way of rolling out a new org was the way to go, and the timing really mattered, and we needed to do it in a way where timing was in line with performance management. And if it wasn't, we're basically rinse, wash, and repeating the same type of reorg that was done in the past that led to a lot of assumptions about the org and kind of siloed the org. So we don't need to do that particularly, but in that sense, an example, it was a system in place, meaning the company, meaning all of the parts that are used to doing something a certain way. And this person was the one thing standing in the way of that. And believe me, he felt the pain. He felt the aloneness, the isolation, and feeling a little bit backed into a corner, because that's what the fight was being fought for. And that's not fun, right? If you were to think of an example, maybe you've experienced that. When has been an opportunity or a situation where you were trying to convince maybe a room of people, maybe it was the HR department, maybe it was your manager, maybe you're a new hire, so you have new eyes, you see things in a different way. A lot of people have this, but if you're in an organization where tried and true has really won over time after time, there's really a lot of resistance to change. And systems are functions of their parts, right? So if the whole system, 99%, wants to stay the same, and you've got this 1% wanting to change it, of course you're going to feel resistance. Of course you're going to feel alone, because you're up against a whole bunch of different components and parts that are wanting to keep things the same. So that takes a lot of courage. What could you do to be courageous? Maybe you get more people on your side to back you up, or you start to share that to get support. You journal about it to get new ideas. It could be so many different things, but I think first and foremost, extraordinary leaders, literally, and it's a minority of many leaders, are standing in conviction of what they believe. And their job is to influence all the other people on why that is the case. Okay, so that's the first thing. Standing in your conviction as a courageous, extraordinary leader. One other thing I want to mention about this is that there's this great rule of conformity that I learned at the Wright Graduate University when I'd studied transformational leadership and I got my master's, where 70 to 85% of society lives in conformity. So if you think about courage and conformity, they kind of contradict each other usually, right? So just know that you're up against the norm when it's not okay to speak up potentially, or maybe there's a groupthink aspect where everyone else in the system, so to speak, in the company has a certain opinion that is different than yours. And so this is why it's so important to know it's okay to be courageous, and it takes an extraordinary leader, but you also need backup. You need conviction. You need to continue to fight the good fight, because it can't likely be won in one simple statement or presentation or argument or anything like that. All right. What else besides being courageous matters as an extraordinary leader? I think of the second one here, which is also not the usual, is leading with heart, leading as a heart-based leader. Now, I think we're getting there. I think one person by person, one leader by leader, we're helping everyone know that it's okay to bring your heart into the equation. But I think for thousands of, for I was going to say millennia, but basically since the industrial age, it's been more about intellect and knowledge. What are we doing that's best for the bottom line, for profit, for the quarterly results, for the goals that we had? And it's really been like checking our personality sometimes, our own selves at the door, but really just driving through with maybe being super high level and sharing more of us, right? So that's what I would call leading from the heart, which is knowing you're fully vested as a person, back to the ordinary human, because that's what people value and see. And it translates as people see eye to eye that you are a human. But if we're leading just from the mind, if we're just leading from, this is what I said, so you better do it, or whatever, maybe it's a more authoritative, maybe it's just because I said so kind of rationale that I think has been a lot of what we grew up with in the industrial age, doesn't fit the mold anymore. And leaders are being asked and expected to lead in different ways, because people are leaving those jobs if they're not seen and heard, or they're felt, or they don't feel like they're valued. And I coach people all the time on this. I know it's alive and well, especially in certain industries, right? We all probably could name a few of those off the top of our heads, where it's more of a traditional track of things like I think of as like legal, finance, accounting, like that's finance, but just basically jobs where they're much more traditional, and maybe they're not as exposed to the changes that have been swept over in things like the startup community or biotech or technology and things like that. And side note, if you are a woman leader, we're designed to feel, and we're all designed to feel, but women have this as a gift, I think, because we're really tuned in a lot more on our end for feelings and emotions. It's just how we're wired. So if you're checking that at the door, how great do you feel at work? The response is probably not super great, probably not well at all. The last thing I want to share, if you're an extraordinary leader, the third thing here is it's requiring access beyond just your mind. So this is the body, right? Intuition, knowing how you feel. We talked about that. It's in line with being heart-based leader, but bringing in that heart-based leadership and overall your awareness, strengthening and growing your awareness. So what are you sensing and reading around the room that you're sitting in? You're accessing your gut brain and your gut checks for what to do next. Those are all really, really important, and are skills that are developed in emotional intelligence, and we can all develop that, but it takes practice. It takes accepting that that's a possibility, and being willing and open to do things different. Well, this was a very short and sweet episode, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know, and let me know what you're working on. Are you in the camp of ordinary? Are you working on that? Because that's a good thing. Or maybe more on your courage and being extraordinary. Either way, I'm so, so grateful that you joined us today. Have fun being between the ordinary and the extraordinary leader, where your humanness is there while you are leading from the heart. And that can bring many, many things into the fold, like serendipity, new opportunities, and just feeling seen and heard in ways that maybe you have not experienced before on the job. I'm so excited for you. And here's to your next level of leadership. Bye for now.